Hi, this is Karen Alari, and today I'm going to show you how I set up my palette for painting with acrylic paints and how we keep the paint wet as we go. So this is a Masterson Stay Wet Palette that you can purchase at most art supply stores. It's basically just a big plastic box with a sealable lid on it. It comes with a sponge when you buy it that you can wet and then put your palette on top of it. I personally don't like the softness of the sponge. It doesn't give me a hard enough surface to mix my paints on, and also over time it has a tendency to mold. So instead I've gone to using paper towels, and I just roll out two layers of paper towels that are going to fit in the palette, and then I cut them in half so that the paper towel will cover the whole palette in a double layer. As you can see, this is a palette that I've been using. When I'm done with my painting day, I just seal it up, and then I come back in the next day to get ready to paint, and this is the process I go through. I just use a spray bottle and I wet the paper towels down till they're just getting damp, and then I stretch them. That helps you not have as many wrinkles in your palette when you're done, because they're kind of annoying when you're trying to mix your paints. Then once I get it stretched out so it's nice and flat in the palette, I wet it again until it's quite soaked with water. And as you can see, I keep feeling it with my hand until I can tell it's very wet. This is just a disposable palette paper. You can use any brand you want, and it's kind of like wax paper, but it's is more absorptive on one side and more resists the water on the other side. So I just lay that down, and then I transfer my paints from the previous palette. Now these colors are pretty mixed up and messy, and so I'll also be putting some more pure color on the palette, but I don't like to waste paint, so I go ahead and transfer any little dried pieces that are in the paint. I take out as I'm going along. And I always lay my palette out in the same way. It doesn't really matter how you lay your palette out, but you want to put the colors in the same place each time so that you know exactly where you're going to go get your paint colors. You don't have to think about that. It just makes things simpler. And I've laid it out in different ways. I used to lay it all the way around the edges, but now I've come down to this way where I put the colors on one side and the white in the corner. So I just throw away the old palette paper, and I got a little bit messy on this one, but that's okay. So now I'm adding some fresh paint to my palette. The white, I usually get the white in those larger containers like that because I go through a lot of it, but I also use the tube colors. This little thing I'm putting on there is called a key, and you can also purchase those at art supply stores. It just helps you when you get down to the bottom of the tube to roll out the paint easier. It helps you roll the paint tube up. They're very inexpensive and quite handy to have around. So that's about it. I just am putting out the new colors on my palette, and like I said, I've kind of come to this arrangement of color on my palette, but you can use whatever arrangement that you like. And, oh, that's the quinacridone gold, which I also keep. You can notice I'm kind of scraping off my palette knife on the edge of the palette to get the rest of the paint off. I do that as I go, and then you have to come back and clean it off with a paper towel. Otherwise it will dry on the edge of the palette and you won't be able to snap the lid down, and it won't seal completely. That small spray bottle is just a mister bottle that you use during your painting process. And here I'm just sealing the palette up for next time, and it'll stay wet like that for over a week. It really doesn't ever dry out completely when you keep it in these sealable palettes. So that's the process, and I hope that is going to help you get started with your painting. And I'll see you at my website, paintwithkarenalari.com. Thanks a lot.